What's up, you guys? Sasha here, and today we're going to talk about the 9 credit card mistakes you should avoid. Now, we're not going to cover some of the really basic things. I'm not going to tell you that you should look what you're spending or avoid building too much debt or fall for frauds and various scams. We're going to go a little bit deeper under the bonnet and talk about some of the more interesting things that maybe you haven't heard about. Maybe you'll know some of these things, maybe you won't know some of them. I hope you find this useful. Let's roll the intro. We'll start with the first one. The first one's a little bit more obvious than some of the other ones. It is probably one of the more common mistakes that people make, and that is withdrawing cash from a credit card. Now, except for very, very unusual, very specific, very rare circumstances, which you probably will never encounter, it is an extremely bad idea to withdraw cash from a credit card because of the punitive rates and the punitive fees that you're going to be charged. Now, every time you go and withdraw cash, they're going to charge you a fee which will usually be about 3% with a minimum of £3 in the UK, and on top of that, you're then going to be paying interest, which will be usually considerably higher than whatever your APR is or whatever your purchase rate is. So if your purchase rate is, say, 18.9%, which is very common, or 20.9, 22.9, your cash could easily be as high as 25.9 or 29.9, or in some cases even higher. And not only that, but unlike purchases, cash interest rates apply from the date you make the transaction, irrespective of whether you repay your credit card in full, irrespective of anything else. If you withdraw cash, that day, the next day, and every single day after that, you will be paying interest on that cash withdrawal on top of the fee. Now, some people will say, well, I don't use the credit card for cash, but there are lots of other transactions which will be treated as though they were cash by the credit card company, and you'll still have to pay the same fee. You'll still have to pay the higher interest rates. So just be really wary. So these are things like gambling transactions. So if you play poker online, if you do any other form of gambling, those will come through as cash. Even buying a lottery ticket online on a credit card will trigger the cash rates with most providers, so just be extra careful for things that you might not even consider to be gambling. There's other things too, so if you're, say, buying foreign currency online, doing any kind of trading, any of those activities will also be treated as cash and will cost you a lot more in interest. Mistake number 2 is doing low balance transfers or money transfers. Now, some providers are better at this than others, and they actually won't let you do a very low balance transfer or money transfer, but others do let you go as low as 10 or 20 pounds on both of these. And the problem here is something you might not think about. It's in the fee. The fee is typically 3%, 4% or 5%, most usually 3% on both of those transaction types, but they all have a minimum amount, and that's usually £3 on most credit cards. So if you go and send money from your credit card to your current account, which is called a money transfer, and you only send £30, you'll still get charged the £3 fee, which is pretty high because you're essentially paying 10% of the amount you sent in fees alone. So just make sure that when you're considering doing any of these, usually the minimum amount you should be thinking about is £100. If you need any amount below, if you go up to £100, the cost in terms of fees will be exactly the same. So if you're wanting to make the most out of the service and you do want to use it to either send money to your current account or repay another credit card, just have a think about it. Don't do lots of small transactions, do one larger transaction instead. Mistake number 3, and this is so common because people just simply don't know this. Nobody will tell you this in the credit card industry. It is, you should never set up recurring payments on your credit card. Just think about it. Any subscription service, anything else like that, do not put your credit card details down. Always use your debit card, your current account instead. Here is the reason why. Credit cards do not have direct debits as a feature. Credit cards use something very different called a continuous payment authority. And what this means is, in practical terms, exactly the same. So every month an amount of money will be taken from your credit card and paid to whoever it is that you've given your credit card details to. Sounds innocuous enough, but the problem lies in being able to cancel. With a direct debit, you are the owner of that direct debit, and you can cancel it at any time for any reason, and the money will stop coming out of your bank account. If you have a dispute with a service provider, if you're not happy with them, if something's happened to them and you just don't want to pay anymore, all you do is you go into your online banking, you hit a couple of mouse clicks, and done. that thing is cancelled. With the continuous payment authority, the process works the opposite way, and this is where you can get into some seriously bad trouble, and I've seen people get into trouble for this very thing. Technically speaking, the company that you set up your continuous payment authority with is the only company that you can use to cancel this. So in cases where this company's gone under and you can't contact them, or they're in a different country and you have to call them using very expensive phone calls in order to be able to cancel your subscription, or any other number of reasons, you can't just go and cancel it yourself. You have to ask them to do it for you. And if you don't cancel, they're just going to continue taking those payments every single month. Now the problem is, even if you call your credit card company and tell them that you've lost your credit card, have it cancelled, have a new one issued, that continuous payment authority will continue going, and in some cases, this depends on the provider and how they set it up. In some cases, it can go on for months and even years. The legal maximum for this is 6 years, which is incredible. So whatever you do, if you're trying to sign up for a subscription for any service, avoid giving them the credit card details, because you get a continuous payment authority set up instead of direct debit. Now, mistake number 4 is waiting to pay. Now, let's say you've come across some money, I don't know, maybe you got paid a bonus at work and suddenly you have a bit more cash than you normally would and you're looking to repay your credit card. Some people say, hey, I'm going to wait for the next statement and then I'll know exactly how much to repay, because the statement will tell me and I'll be able to pay that much in 2 weeks' time. Now, the problem with that is every single day counts if you currently have a balance that's incurring interest. You do not need to wait for your statement. You do not need to wait to make that payment. You can go online and look at your exact amount owed right now and make a payment for that. Now, we're going to cover a separate issue about trading interest a bit later on in this list, but if you have some money that you want to pay into your credit card and your credit card has a balance and you're paying interest on that balance, do not delay, pay it that very day. Even paying tomorrow will still cost you more, because interest gets charged on a daily basis according to the closing amount at the end of the business day on your credit card. So if it's before 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on the credit card you use, and you are wanting to make that payment, go make a faster payment from your current account that very day. It will land into your account immediately, in some cases within minutes, in other cases, and certainly by the next morning with pretty much every single provider. Go and do that instead. Mistake number 5 is expecting protection for things that you're not going to get protection for in terms of Section 75. This is very, very specific, but people can often get this one wrong. Now, Section 75 is something that gives you protection for purchases you made with your credit card in the case that the service that you've paid is not delivered, or the product is not received, or there is a major issue with it, like it's broken, or there's some kind of service issue that is not being honored. Whatever it is, the credit card company is jointly liable with you for all the things you buy with that credit card. Now, you don't have to pay the full amount on the credit card in order to get this protection, and the protection applies for the full amount even if you only paid part, let's say just a deposit. So let's say you're buying a new car and you pay only the deposit using a credit card, and then you pay the rest of the bulk using a wire transfer or something else. In that case, the entire value of the car will be protected by Section 75. Now, there's 2 things you need to know about Section 75 which are really, really important. The first thing is that you have to make a purchase which is between £100 and £30,000 in order to qualify. So if you're buying something that costs you £75, £80, £90, you will not get that protection using a credit card, and a lot of people simply forget that this is the case. So these things are relatively expensive. Spending £80 on one item is a lot of money, but Section 75 doesn't kick in until you hit the £100 mark, and that is something important that you should remember. Now, the upper limit is something that most people will never hit, but some people can get really badly stung. Now, if you're buying a brand new car that costs more than £30,000, or if you're doing some work to your house which is substantial, let's say you're converting a loft or you're building an extension, whatever it is, if the sum of that entire work is over £30,000, even if you've paid only part of it on a credit card, your claim will be refused if you ever have to use Section 75. So just remember that it will not apply. The second thing to remember is that Section 75 applies to individual orders of things or individual items. It doesn't apply to the sum of multiple smaller items or individual things. So let's say your whole family is going on a holiday and you go and buy flights and you book hotels and you're going for a long weekend. You buy 4 outbound flights with EasyJet at £90 each. You buy 4 return flights with EasyJet, £90 each. And you buy 4 hotel rooms, which also cost you £90 each. In this case, if the holiday doesn't go ahead, if there's any issues and you're trying to claim under Section 75, your claim will be refused because the individual items that you're purchasing are under £100. It doesn't matter that the total is greater than that, the credit card company will tell you that none of these things qualify because they all under the £100 benchmark. Now number 6 is another obvious one which I promised I will not cover, but there's some less obvious implications that I did want to quickly cover, and that is forgetting to make payments. Now this is really obvious, but it happens to a lot of people. It's happened to probably everybody who has had credit cards over a period of years. You might just forget to make a payment if you're making manual payments. You might have a direct debit set up, but then you move your current account and suddenly the direct debit fails. You might make manual payments and you just forget. You might have a credit card that you haven't used for a long time, your direct debit has even cancelled, and then just accidentally you use it to buy a coffee. And bang, that £5 goes through, you don't make a payment, and suddenly you're behind, and there are several different big issues in that situation. Number 1, the obvious, which is the impact on your credit. Now if you just miss the one payment, it probably isn't going to be too much of an issue, but if you go any further than that, let's say you miss 2, 3 or 4 payments in a row, you can get into some seriously hot water with any other lending that you might want to do. If you're trying to buy a house in 3 years or whatever, this can actually impact it. So one thing to remember is just, even if you're wanting to make manual payments, even if you don't intend to use the credit card except for the one thing that you got it for, always set a direct debit for the minimum just in case. So if that minimum comes out every single month, you will never have to worry about missing the payment, and you will never get into one of these situations. The other big problem is if you miss one payment on a 0% credit card, whether that's a 0% purchase deal or a 0% balance transfer or a 0% money transfer, that 0% will be automatically cancelled right away, and you have to begin paying interest from that point onwards. And that is a major bummer if you're early on a long, say 3-year 0% deal, and you have a big balance sitting there, and let's say you are unable then to get a new credit card, maybe because you've just missed that payment. That is going to be a really frustrating thing, so make sure you do everything in your power to not miss those payments. Mistake number 7 is something that is really common, especially with younger people, and that is not reading your mail. The number of people I know who literally throw the letters away without even opening them, or have a little stack of them on the kitchen table that date back several months, is staggering. And the issue is that those letters contain a lot of really important things that if you don't read them, you will never know, because they're not going to tell you about them otherwise. Some of these are really critical that you read before it's too late. So for example, if the credit card is sending you a notification that your card is being repriced, so your interest rate is being hiked by say 5%, 6%, 9%, whatever it is, you have the option to cancel, but you only know about that if you go and read the letter and you follow the instructions to opt out of the increase. If you don't do that, the increase will be applied automatically. They'll have served you the notice that they're required to do by law, and you'll begin paying interest at a much higher rate just for being ignorant. The same applies to some other less common things like limit decreases or account closures. So sometimes the company will decide to reduce your limit because of risk reasons. Typically the decrease will be applied right away, but they'll notify you at some point of several days later. In some really rare cases, your account will be closed for risk reasons. Even if you've done nothing wrong, you've continued making your payments, whatever it is, the credit card company at any point can decide to close your account down. So just make sure that you do go and read all of those letters to just check that there's nothing important in there that you need to be aware of. Mistake number 8 is one that I've seen a few people that I actually know make, and it is forgetting trailing interest. This is a classic. It is incredibly common, but actually a surprisingly large number of people just never think about, they don't really know about this, and it hits them. And the situation is a bit like this. You have a credit card that you've had for several years, has got some kind of balance on it, and you decided to close it. You have the money to repay the balance in full. You go and log in online, you go and pay the full amount due that month. You go ahead and clear the balance, it's now 0. You go and cut up the card, throw it in the bin, you cancel the direct debit. Hey presto, done, you are happy, you don't have that credit card anymore, and you don't owe any more debt. Except that next month, on the next month's statement, you will have been charged some trailing interest, and if you have cancelled the direct debit and it doesn't come out, and you don't make a manual payment to that card instead, you're going to get into trouble and you're going to go behind on payments, and it's going to begin causing all those credit issues. Trailing interest is the interest due from the last statement date until the date on which you've repaid the balance for which the trailing interest is due. And the reason it exists is because your statement is printed once a month, and the statement calculates the total interest that you have been charged over the previous month, and it prints it and sends it to you. Every single day between the statement and any point in the month before the next statement, the credit card company will not separately go and charge interest for that day until the next statement hits, except in the cases where you repay the balance in full. And the problem is you won't know about the amount that you owe on that interest until the next statement is generated, because that calculation is not run daily, it is only run on statement day. So if you're in a situation where you're going to be repaying the credit card in full and getting rid of it, make sure you wait until the next statement after the payment has cleared. You go and see that the balance is zero and the interest has been charged, and that will be the trading interest. You then repay that interest in full, and only then will your account be fully settled and you can cancel your direct debit and you can completely forget about the card. Don't make that mistake. Mistake number 9 is a bit of a quirky one, but it is not getting a credit card in the first place. This is a mistake that lots and lots of people make, and although I am a big proponent of paying debt down, not getting into debt, not having too many credit cards, not having things that you don't need, having 0 credit cards is a generally bad idea for most people, and the reason is this. If you ever need to borrow a large amount of money in the future, let's say you need to go and buy a house, let's say you need to get car finance, whatever it is, if you haven't ever had any credit on your report that you can show and that the company can see in the credit bureau, you're going to have some serious trouble with getting the next credit at that point in time. And if you're looking to buy a house and the whole deal falls through just because you've never had a credit card, you're going to be kicking yourself. Credit cards are not just good for points, cashback, rewards, loyalty statuses, lounge access, whatever it is that you use your credit cards for. The real big reason that you should have at least one credit card is the fact that it is the only method where you can build your credit history without actually having to borrow money or without having to pay interest or any kind of fees for the privilege. Now, the other alternatives are getting a loan or some kind of other credit, but all of those involve actually borrowing money, having to repay it, and actually costing you money in the process. With a credit card, you can just get a credit card, spend whatever it is that you spend on regular purchases every single month, set up a direct debit to repay it in full. You never have to pay a single penny in fees or interest, and your credit history will grow as a result. Now, some people will say, hey, but I have a phone contract and that reports to the credit reference agency, or I have an overdraft. Now, while that is true, the value of those products to the score that you're going to get when you apply for credit in the future is much, much lower than a credit card or a loan or some other form of genuine finance that you're borrowing. And some lenders will not even consider things like mobile phone contracts because they actually come as a separate data block that they have to purchase separately in order to make their credit decisions, and many simply choose to ignore them and not even buy that data. So when somebody says, hey, mobile phones are a great way of building your credit because they report to the credit reference agencies, in many cases that just won't be true because that data just will not be considered. I hope you guys found this useful. If you have any other mistakes that you think I've missed, please make sure to leave a comment below. If you want to see more videos about managing your money, improving your finances, being better with credit, please make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you get notifications every time one of my videos comes out. And my videos come out on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the moment. If you like this video, I really would appreciate you hitting the like button. It is amazing for the YouTube algorithm. This channel is still very new, and every single one of those likes counts. I'll see you guys later.